Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, or at least I think it's Keith Myers, hiding under the Santa hat, the Seahawks Santa hat. Nice touch, Keith. Welcome in, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's December now, so I felt like being a little, in the season. But yeah, it's I'm ready for a fun show. The Seahawks won again, four straight. It's been a very streaky season. They won 3 in a row to start, then lost 5 out of 6, and now they've won 4 straight and have essentially buried Arizona. The problem is that the Rams refuse to be buried. Otherwise, the Seahawks would be in a commanding spot right now. But instead of worrying about Arizona, we need to be worried about the Rams.
Are we actually rooting for the 49ers on Thursday night?
Yes. I think we are.
Yeah, but whatever helps at this time of the year.
Yeah, it's hard. There are certain teams that it's almost impossible to root for, no matter how much them winning would benefit Seattle, and the 49ers are one of them.
And the Packers are coming in on Sunday, and it's that's another one of those teams.
That's the other. Yeah, that's the third team is the Packers. Packers, Steelers, Cowboys, Niners. Those are the teams that I honestly, under no circumstance, can I make myself root for them. But
make an exception on Thursday.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to root. I can't root for the 49ers, but I'm not going to root for the Rams either. I'm going to root for I don't know, those teams to wear each other out. And
a tie could conceivably help Seattle.
Oh, a tie would very much help Seattle. That might as well be a loss. So,
right. So Seahawks come in this week, beat the Cardinals on Sunday in Glendale, 30-18. This team was 4-5 a month ago, Keith. A month ago, and looked like it was going to be a stretch that was just going to kind of bury the Seahawks. You mentioned burying the Cardinals. The Seahawks didn't have much hope or even a slight glimmer. And all of a sudden we go on this tear. Ernest Jones comes in. It seems like he's made a big difference. Tyrese Knight.
Knight's playing Bryant's really well.
Bryant's playing well. Leonard Williams. The whole defense. I mean, I'm going to give everybody credit, including Mike McDonald. I mean, it's a phenomenal turnaround, really. And maybe it isn't a turnaround. Maybe it just took that long for everything to kind of get into motion, get into play, get the right players playing. Communication was always going to be at a premium with a new coaching staff and new players all around. And everything just finally started to click. And now they're, at 5 games, you got to take them at their word. And what I mean by that is you got to take what you see on the field as legitimate if it's 5 in a row against pretty decent quality opponents, especially facing teams that can run the ball very effectively. And they've essentially gone from dead last in the NFL to first or second in a few different key stopping the run categories. It's just crazy.
It is just absolutely crazy that they would be able to turn things around. I think turning it around is the right thing because they were abysmal at stopping the run. And that's not true anymore. This is now a team that it's hard to run against. They're playing as a team. They're playing smart. They're good fundamentals in terms of the way that they're attacking things. And it's really, these are some of the best running teams too, right? We're talking about Arizona and the 49ers and the Rams. Like these are teams that run the ball and do it well. And they just struggled to do anything against Seattle. So,
not only that, we're holding all those opponents in the last 5 games to 18 points or less. By the end of this game, the end of Cardinals game, Seattle owned the 8th ranked defense by EPA per play, the highest ranking by the Seahawks through week 14 since the 2017 ranked 6th. At this point, the 8th ranking is up from the 28th ranked team at this point in 2023 under Pete Carroll. Seattle is ranked no higher than 16th at this point in any of Pete Carroll's final 6 seasons as head coach. Since week 11, the Seahawks defense is ranked number 2 in points per drive and number 1 in EPA per play, and is only allowing 1.26 points per drive, second in the NFL during that span. Also the 5th highest defensive success rate against the run.
Who is the number 1 in those other stats?
I do not have that information.
Oh, okay.
You know, I think it may be like Philadelphia or something like that.
Yeah, I'm looking
it's just crazy.
I'm looking at you know, some defensive stats, and you know, Philadelphia is giving up 178 passing yards per game, under 200 average. Yeah. That is crazy. They're only giving up 18 points per game. And that's not even the best. The Chargers are only giving up 15.9.
Yeah.
So there's some really good football teams, really good defensive teams, you know, in this league. And the fact that we're mentioning Seattle with them is hard to believe given where they were after 10 games.
It points to a very optimistic and positive future with Mike Macdonald. So, you know, you go through half the season, Keith, and you look back a little bit, you know, you get to that first Rams game and you're just like, man, this is not good. And it doesn't really point to a great future. We might have to completely rebuild the defense from the ground up. If it trajectory is pointing in this direction for the entire season, there's nothing to build on. And now it's completely turned around to the point where this is the defense you build on, and you try to retain as many of these players as you can going into next season. And you just kind of add certain pieces and try to upgrade a few different things and tweak a few things. But overall, this is your ride or die unit, man.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, think about how big that is and how much of an improvement it is in season. Hats off to John Snyder, but mostly, man, it's Mike Macdonald and company really just turning the dials every week and trying and communicating and sticking with the plan and knowing that it's a solid plan and they believe in it. And sure enough, here we are. And really 1 or 2 key trades in season to kind of really solidify this thing and get it really rolling.
Yeah, I mean, that Ernest Jones trade is just, it's crazy how well that worked out for the Seahawks and how good he's been. You know, so credit Schneider for that one, but really it's been, I would agree. I think it's a defensive coaching staff because they're not doing the same things they were doing earlier in the season. They've changed rotations. They've tried to put guys in better positions for them to be successful. And you've seen guys being used in different ways and on different sides, you know, of the formation. Ways they're trying, it's like as they're getting to know their players better, they're using them more effectively. And that is it's a sign of a good coaching staff that you continue to make those changes. You continue to improve as a team in terms of, you know, you're not stuck by what you thought you had in the off season. You're continuing to help and you're continuing to build.
You're not even stuck with what you had during the first 6 or 7 games. I mean, you've seen Ernest Jones come in. You've seen Tyrese Knight come in from, playing, for the first 3 games and then being basically benched and not playing very much at all for the next 4. And he's, comes in with Ernest Jones and kind of takes over as a tandem there. And it looks like they can build on that tandem now for years to come if they re-sign Ernest Jones. Kobe Bryant.
God, they better re-sign him. He's been,
right?
he's been so good.
He's been amazing.
If they let him walk, after he made such a difference. Like, for them to let him walk would be just
this is similar to the Leonard Williams deal. They're not going to let him go. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they announce any day that he has an extension or he's the priority number 1 in the offseason, I think, for sure. That first, he had that interception, right? And then the first play on offense that Geno had was a touchdown to Njigba, 19-yard touchdown. And then on the next offensive pass from Kyler Murray on the next series, Kobe Bryant intercepted the ball. Seattle goes down and scores to take a 17-7 lead. That was the difference, really. The 2 turnovers that led directly to 14 points was the difference in this game, because you go out and you look at the box score. You had similar offensive production on both teams.
It was nice that Seattle had the lead, because what you were able to do then is, when the running game, when you ran the ball and it gets stuffed, you don't feel compelled to stop running it. You can continue to run it, because you've got a 14, at that point you had a 10-point lead. And it paid off. It paid off in big time, with Zach Charbonnet getting 134 yards on the ground, 6.1 yards per carry, to go with the 2 touchdowns. Like, he had a monster day, and they needed the running game to come in and take some of the pressure off Geno. And if they get a running game going like this,
and Geno turns in a super efficient performance. It's not huge stat wise, but with the 1 touchdown, but very efficient with the ball. 80% completion
of 30s.
percentage.
Yeah, it's 80% completion. Did not get sacked.
Great, and only 2 pressures allowed by that offensive line.
Yeah,
that's a huge difference.
It goes to show you, Arizona. They were in first a couple of weeks ago, and all of that, but that is still a flawed football team, and
it doesn't matter who the coach is; they continue to fade year after year down the stretch.
Yeah, because it's a flawed roster and a flawed football team, and I think that at some point, like, they will turn the corner and get better, but that's not right now.
I mean, Seattle's a flawed football team too, but look at us in December. I mean, and check this out, Keith, like the coaching makes a difference. So the Cardinals offense versus the rest of the NFL, 27.5 points per game against Mike Macdonald's defense, 12 points per game. Last 4 division games, the Seahawks are holding the NFC West opponents to an average of 13.5 points per game. Rams had 13, San Francisco had 17, Arizona had 6 the first game, and 18 the second game. That's unreal. That, to me, that's like almost the best news out of this entire season, is we now have a defense and a coach who can go head to head with the Kyle Shanahans and Sean McVays and the Gannons of this division and stop them in their tracks and essentially take over the NFC West again.
Yeah.
How huge is that? That's huge.
Being able to beat a Shanahan team is nice. It's good to have a coaching staff that can do that. Now we'll see him beat a McVay team, because he hasn't done that yet.
Yeah, and that game, oh my God, that game is looming large in the not too distant future.
Yeah,
right. We get ahead of ourselves here. We got to get the Green Bay Packers. We got to get the Minnesota Vikings. I think, Keith, if you really look at the schedule and the way things are lining up, you've got to get one of those games. Both those games are at Lumen Field. Then you've got the Bears, right? We should win that game. I know it's on the road, but the Bears are not
but
good.
The Bears are not good. They've already fired their coach. They thought they might be a little closer to contending than they are, but that's not a good football team yet. They're
Yeah.
still they're building.
And
They were better than expected, but they're not good.
And then the Rams, like,
Yeah.
I would have thought, a couple weeks ago, looking at the Rams trajectory, that game would have been meaningless, and that Seattle, if they continue to win, would take this division going away. 49ers fading. If we won this game against Arizona, that meant that Arizona was no longer in contention, and the Rams would continue to lose. Especially like the last weekend, they could have easily lost that game, but they kept scoring. Their offense looks good, very good, and that game kind of freaks me out a little bit now.
It'll be fun, no matter
it
what.
could come down to that game being whether Seattle either makes the playoffs or is the third or fourth seed, and who they face in the playoffs. Could even be the Rams.
Yeah. So they're going to play the next three against the NFC North. And if you go 2-1 in those three, the worst case scenario is you're tied with the Rams going into the final week. Winner take the division. And that right there that needs to be the goal. You have to win at least 2 of these next 3 games. Yes. I think they can do it. Both Minnesota and the Packers are good teams. They're tough teams, but these are not unbeatable teams.
I think honestly, actually the Green Bay Packers are easier to beat. They're flawed in certain ways that I think Seattle can take advantage of, especially on their defense. And their offense doesn't scare me nearly as much now that Seattle's defense is playing the way that they are. The Minnesota Vikings are interesting to me. I think that Darnold's playing very, very, very well. They've got a complete roster. I know that you've been kind of a little, let's wait and see if they're for real or not this year on them. But I think, at this point, you got to say that they're pretty real. It's at home. That necessarily hasn't meant a strategic advantage for Seattle for a few years. But I think this is a different defense now, and that dynamic starts to shift a little bit when you get a defense like this that we're kind of building. Those home games tend to be more important, and they tend to help a defense more than not. So I look for Seattle to kind of start to reclaim that home field advantage that they've been missing these last probably 5 years.
Yeah. Sam Darnold has been good. Geno Smith has been good. We are a Zach Wilson resurgence away from perhaps saying the Jets are no longer allowed to draft quarterbacks.
What do you mean?
Geno Smith drafted by the Jets. Didn't play well, ran out of town. Sam Darnold drafted by the Jets. Didn't play well, ran out of town. Zach Wilson drafted by the Jets. Didn't play well, ran out of town. If Zach Wilson suddenly becomes a good quarterback somewhere, the Jets should be banned from drafting quarterbacks. It's not good for anybody's career.
Yeah. I hear you.
I'm making a joke, Bill.
I'm
making a joke, Bill.
I know. I hear you though. I do. I just think, it's what, 2 or 3 different regimes over time. So I guess it really doesn't matter. Maybe 2 general managers made all those picks.
Same owner.
Same owner. So let's get to the rest of this Cardinals game before we kind of put it to bed. I was really impressed again with, well, obviously the run game, and Geno Smith's efficiency and Charbonnet. I mean, I was there at the game. It was really nice to be there. Had really pretty decent seats, and was able to kind of watch it firsthand unfold in real time. I haven't watched the game back on tape yet, but my first impressions were, man, Charbonnet was on a mission, and I texted before the game, before kickoff, with Dan Viennes, because Dan was at the game and he was sitting a section behind me. And I was like, so my expectation for Charbonnet, after I knew that he was going to start, was I'd love for somehow Seattle to be able to get him at least 20 touches and see if he can be Zach Charbonnet. Like he can Charbonnet the Cardinals defense. And what I mean by that is he always had this ability, when we drafted him, that he could be kind of a guy that could wear down a team a little bit. He was a little physical. He'd still have that little speed thing once in a while. And he was fairly decisive in college, one cut and go kind of a guy. And we just haven't seen that come together. I don't necessarily think he had all the touches in the game to kind of get really in a zone. And so that was my wish for this game, was to get Zach Charbonnet going. And of course that was a huge wish because we haven't had a running game this year very much.
They got him 29
Isn't that crazy?
Touches in this game. 22 carries for
carried the ball 22
yards,
times.
And then 7 receptions. He was the team's leading receiver
huge
in terms of receptions. 7 receptions for 59 yards on 7 targets. He got 29 touches in this game.
Player of the game.
He was the offensive MVP. Yeah. I know that people are like, "Oh, Geno had a great game. Let's do that." But I'm sorry, you got to give it to Charbonnet. He was phenomenal in this game.
In addition, he had 91 yards rushing after contact, well, the most of any player in the NFL this season, not just last weekend, the entire season. And Kenny McIntosh too, 38 carries, 38 yards on 7 carries.
Yeah, 5.4 yards per carry.
And 3 first downs on those. Yeah. And Jigba came hard through,
oh God. Yeah. JSN has been huge this entire season, but 5 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Like he was a monster again. And it's become a situation where he is this team's leading receiver. And yeah, guys are double teaming DK Metcalf, and they're really trying to not let DK beat them. But that just opens things up for JSN, and he's taking advantage of the opportunities and is having a great year. Teams are going to have to start rotating coverage towards JSN, especially on 3rd down, and that's just going to open DK Metcalf up. They can't double team everybody. So at some point, these you're going to see, this dynamic shift, but 82 yards, 16.4 yards per reception. Like that is just great, especially for a guy that's known for being underneath a slot receiver, not like a take the top off the defense kind of guy. To get that high of an average means that he's turning every catch into yards. He's been having a great season. So, yeah.
So, I mean, this was definitely the most complete game of the season. It was just really nice to see. It was, other than that first touchdown we gave up on the first drive to Arizona on that big play, it was a really solid performance all around, including the offensive line. Seattle had the
best game the offensive line has had in 2 years.
5 runs over 10 yards, and 3 of them had Lumea leading the attack. Pancake block. The That 51-yard touchdown was sprung by him and Lucas pulling from the right side over to the left side and clearing out of the clear lane. And Charbonnet went untouched, 51 yards. Mike McDonald had this to say about Lumea at right guard. He's rugged, powerful, and nasty, man. McDonald said of Lumea, the 6th round pick who beat out 3rd round rookie Christian Haynes for the starting job in week 13. It's on tape now. So this is who he is. He's got to keep going on this trajectory, and I trust he will because he's a heck of a guy. He's still so young, man. That's really exciting, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, it sounds like he's the guy. He's the guy for the rest of the year. He's the guy that's expected to start in 2025. That's what that sounds like.
That is what that sounds like. And so now for Christian Haynes, he's got to fix whatever is holding him back, which I still think is mental. It's a confidence issue. He's got to get past that and come in and fight for the left guard job, because honestly, Tomlinson is now the weak link on the line. It's no longer Bradford because Bradford's not playing. So Tomlinson's the weakest member of the line, and if Haynes can show that he can play that spot, it'll be his.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely want to invest in the young kid. Tomlinson's not going to be around forever. I mean, based on the way he's playing and has played the last 4 games where the offense is kind of coming together and the continuity is important, I could see them throwing a small little continuation contract over to Tomlinson just to kind of keep it going, have him come in and compete. Maybe it is Christian Haynes. Maybe they draft a player. Maybe it's an upgrade in free agency. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if they bring him back in some way. But yeah, just a fun, super fun game. It was easy against a division rival. It was no contest. Like, we were the better team, and that was just fun to see in person for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it really kind of solidified my opinion that this team is definitely on the right track. We've got the right coach. We've got now an opportunity to build on the offensive performance. And if we can somehow duplicate it in the Green Bay game, we can duplicate it in the Minnesota game. It duplicates out over Chicago and finish the season. The combo between an efficient offense that we saw against Arizona plus this defense, this team could beat any team on any given Sunday, and that it would have to scare the bejesus out of anybody we play in the playoffs.
Yeah, and right now they're set. They're the 3 seed, so they're set to get a home game. Then they would most likely have to go on the road in round 2, but then could come home, for the NFC title game, depending on what happens above them. So that's crazy. Like it's so where we were a month ago to where we are now. It God, it feels like we're talking about a different season, a different year.
It seems like if the defense is true, and if the offense, the improved offense, is also true, meaning this is who they are, we match up well against every other NFC team. This team, as unlikely as it seems, could get to that NFC Championship game and win it and represent in the Super Bowl. I just don't know that there's a real dominant NFC team out there. You could look at Minnesota, you could look at Philadelphia, but who else is there?
Detroit.
Well, yeah.
Detroit's the best team in the NFC, in my opinion.
I briefly forgot about Detroit. Thank you for reminding me of that little reality. Yes.
Been really good defensively. Offensively, they are middle of the road, but defensively they're very good. That's going to be a very tough out in the playoffs. Minnesota, I just have not believed in all year, and because they keep getting fluky wins, and so that 10-2 feels unreal. But I was looking at stats. They're a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
the way games end, and sometimes it feels fluky that they get a win. Sure, okay, that's true, but you don't have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense and not be good. So, yeah, I mean,
Sam
what team
Darnold's having
matches
a
up?
career year and just had a
Well,
career
that's not
game,
hard.
you know.
It's not hard
Well,
for Darnold to have a career year when he's done nothing in his career.
5 touchdowns last game.
But he's looked really good. He's making a lot of money. If you're Arizona, or not Arizona, if you're Minnesota, what do you do after this season? Do you re-sign Sam Darnold, or do you let him go to a big payday elsewhere because you drafted a rookie this year and you've got this kid that you spent a first round pick on?
Yeah. Or trade the first round rookie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Sam Darnold would he get like a Geno Smith contract, or would he get a Kirk Cousins type contract?
I think somewhere in the middle. He's
I
younger
guess
than
I
Smith.
guess if he took him to the Super Bowl, he'd get a big contract.
Yeah, he's going to get paid. If they
So
fade
going
this last month down and then don't do anything in the playoffs, he's going to be viewed as the problem, which is unfair because he's played really well.
So going back to that Detroit mention, if we were to face them in the NFC Championship game, I don't know if we'd face them in the semifinals or NFC Championship, one or the other. I I like that game because Seattle's played them so well, even in losses. 2 wins prior, and then the loss this season have been very entertaining games. A lot of offense, not as much defense as you'd like to see. But now that Seattle's improved defensively, I like that matchup.
I'd love to see this defense up against Detroit, because Detroit is a powerful offense, but this version of Seattle's defense is much better than the version that we saw early in the season. In that one, Geno and the offense actually kept scoring. I think they ended up with 31 points and they lost by 2 scores because the defense couldn't stop anything. If the offense can score that way and this defense plays the way it has the last 5 weeks, Seattle wins that game, don't you think? It'll be like last year's game or the year before's that game, where there's higher scoring and a lot of points. But I don't know.
Yeah, I do.
I just right now, and part of it is we're coming off a win, and we're coming off a win when the offense finally worked, and it hasn't worked since week 4. That it hasn't worked since the Detroit game, but it finally worked here against Arizona. And even then, they only got 6 points after halftime. So there's that.
Yeah, they had 3 or 4 drives in a row where they didn't get much at all, and it was very frustrating to watch.
Yeah, but it felt like they were trying to
because
run
you
the
knew
clock
that they were
down.
leaving points. You know, you didn't score at the end of the first half. You didn't score in the first
That's
drive.
the part that
in the second
bothered
half.
me. You had the ball at the end of the first half and you were driving, and then you let the drive stall out before you could get in range, and then you get the ball to start the second half and don't do anything with it. See, in those situations, you want to score in both those possessions, even if it's just 3 points, because getting 2 in a row and you get 3 points on each of those drives, that's 6 points, and you put the game out of reach. Like when you have, those are the situations you want, those middle 4 minutes of the game, and for them to do nothing with it was really disappointing.
So at the end of this week, we're going to come back and we're going to preview the Green Bay Packer game on Sunday night.
Yeah.
The Packers are just 2-4 against teams with winning records. Green Bay's 9 victories, Colts 6-7, Titans 3-10, Rams 7-6. There's one. Cardinals 6-7, Texans 8-5. There's the other. Jaguars 3-10, Bears 4-9, 49ers 6-7, Dolphins 6-7. Total record 49-68. Green Bay's 4 losses are against NFC teams, against quarterbacks in the top 10 for passer ratings. They're 1-4 this year.
They played a really easy schedule.
Like Seattle. Yeah, I like Seattle's chance chances in this game, really, just to shut down the Packers offense and then do enough on the Packers have a decent defense, but do enough offensively to go get this game. So it'll be interesting to kind of break that down a little bit closer, take a look at some advanced stats and kind of see where our advantages and disadvantages are in this game. What do you think, Keith? 4 in a row.
Right.
Can we get the 5th one?
I think we can. I really do. I'm looking at this. I just don't see it when I watch the Packers. I see them beating a lot of bad teams. And yeah, you can only beat the team that you're playing, but when they've played against a good team, it hasn't looked as pretty. Now, part of it, some of that is they were without their quarterback for a bit in the middle. And that certainly skews the stats versus what you're going to get when they step out onto Lumen Field on Sunday night. But they are a flawed team too. So is Seattle, but so are the Packers. And of these next two, I think that's definitely the more winnable game. And I'm curious to see what we're going to get.
It'll be a true test, though. This is a good team. I mean, this is an 8-win team. You know, I don't care how they got there, but this is kind of a true test. It's also a game you got to have. If you're Seattle, you got to get this game. It really gives us a leg up in the division. It gives us a leg up in the NFC. It really allows the team to get one of the next 2 games before that LA game. If they lose this game, then you're pressed where you feel like you get to get all 3 games.
Yeah, you've got to get by Minnesota, which I think is the harder of these next 2 games. The Bears should be a win no matter what. And then to set up a showdown with the Rams. Now, the Rams may fold here in the next couple of weeks, and by the time we get to that game, it doesn't matter. Seattle's already locked things up. But I'm assuming they're not going to. I'm assuming that the Rams are going to keep winning and they're going to put pressure on Seattle. And if they do that, that means Seattle needs to get the win in Chicago, which I think they'll get and fairly easily. And they've got to get one of these next 2 at home. And if they do that, they go into that final week in LA as the division leader. And the winner of that game wins the division. And if Seattle gets 2 wins going into that they'll be sitting at 10 wins. That probably puts them as a wild card team. But I don't want that to be, where they end up. Like, I want that to be the win to put them to 11 wins. Win the division.
Split the difference between our 2 predictions.
Yeah. Because I picked 10
I can't
and I said I picked 10 wins and I said that it all comes down to that last game. And I picked a loss to Seattle because I thought that the game wouldn't
to the Rams,
matter.
You mean?
Yeah, sorry, a loss to the Rams. And so I because I thought that game was going to be the Rams were in desperation mode, needing a win to get into the playoffs, and Seattle had locked their spot up in the playoffs, and that game didn't matter to Seattle, so everyone was going to rest, but it mattered. It was basically a playoff game to the Rams, so I picked it as a loss. But I said in our show, and you can go back and listen, that if that game matters to Seattle, I would pick Seattle to win. So that puts us right where I said we would be. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got to happen once in a decade, right? Where the team
and
actually does what I think.
A little short now. If they went out. Yeah.
I had them losing to
if they went out.
Green Bay, but beating Minnesota. And so that's probably backwards.
Yeah, no, you did. You've done good so far. You have the correct record through this week, regardless of how they got there. I had them at 12 wins at the end, which seemed very optimistic when I did it. but I looked at the roster, I looked at the schedule. I thought, man, they could do this if everything lines up and goes right. I just didn't put enough credence to the idea that it was a new coaching staff and they were going to have bumps in the road and all that stuff, and they have. But to see them surging now to the point where you could conceivably win the next 4 and get to that 12 wins is phenomenal to me. And it really does bode well for the future of this franchise under Mike Macdonald. I couldn't be more thrilled with that aspect of it. No, regardless of what happens in the next 4 weeks, I think it's already been proven that we're on the right track, and we just need to finish this thing out, to make the season a success under what Mike Macdonald would think would be a success. But I already think it's been successful. I just think that you gotta try to finish out now what you've already accomplished and get into the playoffs and see if you can get a game, get some experience, playoff experience, all that kind of stuff. And it's exciting. It's exciting. I mean, this is great that we're playing for something or seemingly something in middle of December. It seems like it's been a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it really has, because they weren't in it where these games mattered during Wilson's last year. And they weren't last year. And the year in between, they were great at the beginning of the year, but were fading at this point. So, I mean, the games meant something, but the team was fading. And so, yeah, I mean, it comes down to these are the most significant games that Seattle's played in December since the second to last year of Russell Wilson.
Yeah. So what's that? 2019?
2020?
So
somewhere in there.
And it's an ascending roster. It's an ascending team.
Yeah, it's very young.
Yeah.
Very young, very talented. Got some holes, not imperfect roster construction, but coming together at the right time. The defense is getting better every week, and that's kind of scary. And if the offense can, especially now that Lumea is playing, notice the offense has been better since Lumea was inserted into the lineup. And not even by a little bit. He has been just frighteningly good in replace of Bradford, significantly better than Bradford's ever been in these two. And it's only 2 games. Now there's tape for him, and we'll see what teams do as they continue to attack him as the rookie. But yeah, I mean, his first start he was average, and this last start he was good. So I've been impressed. I still think they should have made him a center. I'm not going to let that go.
And that's the thing about Christian Haynes too. Christian Haynes has got the athletic profile and whatnot to potentially be a center. Maybe they switch him there and compete with Oluwatimi and solve the left guard issue in the draft. That remains to be seen. We'll see. But
they ought to do
so
something.
let's get out of here.
They also need a right tackle, at least a backup, a swing tackle, someone young that they're developing in case Lucas has knee problems again.
Agreed. So let's get together later in the week and talk about this Green Bay game. Today was a fun show, just going over all that. It's just all good news right now, so it's really kind of cool. You can find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, like it, share it, leave a comment, all that good stuff. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.